Why do girls get mad over the smallest things? Have you ever noticed something almost impossible to explain? A girl can spend her entire day smiling. She's kind to strangers, she laughs with her friends, she's patient with everyone around her. But then, the person she truly loves replies with just one word, K, and suddenly, it's fine, forget it, do whatever you want. Meanwhile, the guy is staring at his phone thinking, wait, what did I even do? Most people say, girls are just too emotional, but what if that's not the real story? Maybe we've been asking the wrong question all along. Instead of asking, why is she angry? Maybe we should ask, what made her heart hurt before she became angry? Because here's something people rarely talk about. Anger is usually not the first emotion. It's the last one. Before anger, there's disappointment, there's loneliness, there's overthinking, there's that quiet little voice inside saying, I wish you noticed without me having to tell you. And when those emotions stay trapped inside, they often come out as anger. Here's something interesting. Think about your own life. Who has the power to hurt your feelings the most? A complete stranger? Or someone you deeply love? Exactly. The closer someone is to your heart, the louder even their smallest actions feel. That's why, for many girls, the strongest emotions often come out around the people they feel safest with. Not because they want to create drama, but because that's where their heart is most vulnerable. And maybe, the next time she gets upset over something that feels tiny, don't ask, why are you overreacting? Ask yourself, what is she feeling that I'm not seeing? Because sometimes, the loudest anger is simply the quietest cry for reassurance. Do girls really get angry, or are they just asking to be understood? Let's be honest. Have you ever heard a girl say, I'm not mad, even though you can almost feel that she was? Yeah, we've all been there. And if you're a guy, you probably thought, why can't she just tell me what's wrong? But here's something fascinating. Sometimes, she honestly doesn't know how to explain it herself. Not because she's trying to play games, not because she wants attention, but because emotions don't always arrive with clear words. Sometimes, they arrive as a feeling, long before they become a sentence. Imagine this. You're carrying a backpack, not for 1 hour, not for 1 day, but every single day. At first, you barely notice the weight, but little by little, it gets heavier. And then, someone lightly taps your shoulder. That's it. Nothing painful, just a tiny tap. But suddenly, you explode. Not because the tap was heavy, because the backpack already was. For many girls, life can feel exactly like that. Deadlines, family expectations, friendships, overthinking, trying not to disappoint anyone, trying to look okay, even when they're exhausted. And then, the one person they hoped would make life feel lighter forgets to call, replies coldly, sounds distracted, or says, you're overthinking. That sentence might sound tiny to him, but to her, it can feel like, my feelings don't matter. And that's why, sometimes, she isn't reacting to what just happened. She's reacting to everything she's been quietly carrying. Here's something psychologists have noticed. The people we trust the most often see the most emotional version of us. Think about children. Many kids behave perfectly at school, then come home and suddenly cry, throw a tantrum, or become emotional. Why? Because home feels safe. Their nervous system finally relaxes. The emotions they've been holding in finally come out. Adults aren't that different. We all wear masks outside, but around the people we trust, those masks begin to fall. So if someone you're close to suddenly becomes emotional, it doesn't automatically mean they're difficult. Sometimes it means they finally feel safe enough not to pretend. Now, does that mean every argument is okay? No. Healthy love still needs responsibility, kindness, communication, listening from both people. Because love isn't about guessing forever. It's about learning each other's language. Maybe her language is reassurance. Maybe yours is logic. Neither one is wrong. They're just different. And maybe that's why one person says, I solved the problem, while the other quietly whispers, I didn't need a solution. I just needed you to understand how I felt. That's a lesson many couples learn years too late. In the next chapter, we're going to answer a question almost every guy has asked at least once. Why does she expect me to know what's wrong without her saying anything? Is it unrealistic? Is it fair? Or is there something much deeper happening beneath the surface? Let's find out. Have you ever heard this sentence before? If I have to explain it, then what's the point? And every guy listening right now is probably thinking, wait, how am I supposed to know what's in your head? Honestly, that's a fair question, because no one can read minds. Not men, not women, not anyone. So why does this happen so often? Let's imagine a simple story. A couple has been together for almost 3 years. She has a huge presentation at work tomorrow. The entire day, she's nervous, she's anxious, she keeps checking her phone, hoping he'll text, "Good luck tomorrow, I know you'll do amazing." Instead, he sends, "Did you watch the game?" That's it, nothing else. Now, from his point of view, he didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't being rude. He wasn't trying to ignore her. He simply didn't know what she needed. But inside her mind, a completely different conversation begins. He knows tomorrow is important. How could he forget? If he really pays attention to me, why didn't he notice? Notice something. She isn't upset because of the message. She's upset because of what the message means to her. Sometimes people aren't reacting to your actions. They're reacting to the meaning they've attached to those actions. For many women, feeling emotionally seen is one of the deepest forms of love. Not expensive gifts, not perfect dates, not grand romantic speeches. Just feeling noticed, feeling remembered, feeling understood. But here's where relationships become complicated. Many men show love by solving problems. Many women first want someone to understand the feeling before trying to solve the problem. Neither approach is wrong. They're simply different. Imagine she's saying, "Today was really exhausting," and he immediately replies, "Just quit that job." He's trying to help, but she hears, "He didn't even hear how I felt." What she wanted was, "That sounds really hard. I'm proud of you for getting through today." Same conversation, completely different emotional outcome. Now let's be very clear. No one should expect their partner to magically read their mind. Healthy relationships need honest communication. If something hurts, say it. If you need reassurance, ask for it. Love grows stronger when people communicate, not when they silently test each other. But here's another truth. Over time, people naturally begin to notice each other's little habits, your favorite coffee, your biggest fears, the days you become quiet, the smile that's slightly different when something is wrong. That's not mind reading, that's attention. And attention is one of the purest forms of love. Maybe that's why, when someone remembers the tiny details about us, we feel deeply loved. Not because the details themselves matter, but because they quietly say, "I see you, I notice you, you matter to me." So the next time someone says, "You should have known," don't immediately hear criticism. Instead, ask yourself, have I been paying attention, or have I only been listening? Because hearing someone's words and noticing someone's heart are two very different skills. And in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something almost every couple experiences. Why do the smallest arguments sometimes hide the biggest fears? That's where relationships become truly interesting. Have you ever had an argument that started over something completely ridiculous? Maybe he forgot to say goodnight. Maybe she got upset because he replied 30 minutes late. Maybe he forgot one small promise, and suddenly it turned into a huge fight. From the outside, everyone says, "Seriously, you're fighting over that?" But here's the truth. Most relationship arguments are almost never about the thing you're arguing about. They're about what that thing represents. Imagine this. A girl sends her boyfriend a picture. She's excited. Maybe she spent 20 minutes choosing that outfit. Maybe she wasn't even confident enough to send it. She finally gathers the courage, hits send, and waits. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Finally, his reply comes. Nice. That's it. Just nice. Now the guy is thinking, I answered. What's the problem? But inside her heart, a different story begins. Was he not excited? Did he even look at it? Maybe I'm not attractive anymore. Maybe he doesn't care like he used to. Notice something. The argument isn't about one word. It's about what that one word made her feel. Our brains are strange. When we love someone, we don't just hear their words, we give those words meaning. And sometimes that meaning is completely different from what the other person intended. A simple "okay" can sound like "I'm busy," or "leave me alone," or "I don't care," depending on the emotional state of the person reading it. That's why texting creates so many misunderstandings. You can read the exact same message in 10 different tones, even though the sender never meant any of them. Relationships Relationships are funny like that. Sometimes you're fighting your partner. Sometimes you're fighting your own fears. Now here's something beautiful. When someone truly loves you, they don't always need perfect words. They just need little reminders. A random, "Did you eat? Drive safe. Call me when you get home." Those aren't ordinary sentences. They're emotional safety. They're tiny ways of saying, "I'm thinking about you even when you're not here." And that's why, when those little moments disappear, some people don't just miss the message, they miss the feeling behind it. But let's be fair, this isn't only about women. Men experience this too. Many just express it differently. Some become quiet, some become distant, some pretend nothing happened, even when something inside them hurts. Because not everyone cries. Some people simply stop talking. Real love begins when both people stop asking, "Who's right?" and start asking, "What is my partner feeling right now?" That single question can save relationships that hundreds of arguments never could. Because underneath almost every small fight lives one silent question: do I still matter to you? And maybe that's the question both people have been asking all along. In the next chapter, we're going to uncover one of the biggest relationship myths ever created. Do girls really want a perfect boyfriend? Or do they simply want to feel emotionally safe? The answer might surprise you. Let me ask you something. If I asked 100 girls, describe your dream boyfriend, what do you think they'd say? 6 feet tall? Rich? Handsome? Perfect body? Luxury car? Maybe a few would. But after the excitement fades, after the butterflies disappear, after months or even years together, do you know what most people actually crave? Not perfection, peace. Because attraction can make someone fall in love, but emotional safety is what makes them stay. Imagine this. It's 11:47 p.m. A girl has had one of the worst days of her life. She doesn't want advice. She doesn't want solutions. She doesn't even know why she's crying. She just calls the one person who feels like home. He answers. And before she can even speak, he says, "Can we talk tomorrow? I'm busy." Maybe he's genuinely busy. Maybe he's not a bad person. But in that tiny moment, her heart quietly whispers, "Maybe I'm alone." Now imagine the same situation, but this time he answers, "Hey, you don't sound okay. What happened?" Same phone call, same people, completely different feeling. That's emotional safety. It's not about fixing every problem. It's about becoming the place where someone feels safe enough to bring their broken pieces. Here's something many men never realize. Sometimes when she tells you about her bad day, she's not testing your intelligence. She's testing something much deeper. Can she be vulnerable with you without feeling judged? Can she cry without feeling weak? Can she overthink without being called crazy? Because when the answer is yes, trust grows. And trust is the foundation of every lasting relationship. But let's stop for a second, because this goes both ways. Men need emotional safety too. Many men grow up hearing, "Don't cry, be strong, handle it yourself." So they learn to hide everything. Smile outside, struggle inside. And when they finally open up, they need the same thing. Not judgment, not mockery, just someone who says, "I'm here. You don't have to carry everything alone." Real love isn't about one person protecting the other. It's about creating a space where both people feel safe enough to be completely themselves. Maybe that's why the happiest couples aren't the ones who never fight. They're the ones who never make each other feel unsafe after a fight. Think about that. Because saying, "I'm upset with you," is very different from making someone feel, "I'm going to lose you." Healthy love knows the difference. So maybe the question was never, why do girls get angry? Maybe the real question is, do they feel emotionally safe enough to tell you what's really hurting them? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it's no. And that answer changes everything. In the next chapter, we'll talk about something almost everyone has experienced. Why do people become distant exactly when they need love the most? Have you ever noticed how someone becomes strangely quiet? Instead of saying, "I'm hurting," sometimes silence isn't the absence of love. Sometimes silence is pain without the right words. And this is where many relationships fall apart. One person becomes quiet. The other thinks, "She doesn't love me anymore." The quiet person thinks, "If he really loved me, he'd notice something's wrong. Neither one is trying to hurt the other, they're both waiting to be understood. It's heartbreaking how many relationships end not because two people stopped loving each other, but because they misunderstood each other's silence. Here's a question. When someone you love becomes distant, what's your first reaction? Do you chase them? Do you get angry? Or do you become distant too? Most people choose the third option. And suddenly, two people who desperately want each other start acting like strangers. Not because love disappeared, but because fear became louder than love. Real emotional maturity is having the courage to ask, "You've been quiet lately. Are you okay?" Instead of assuming you don't care anymore. Sometimes that one sentence can save months of misunderstanding. Because love isn't tested on the easy days. It's tested on the days when one person becomes difficult to understand. The days when patience matters more than pride. The days when listening matters more than winning. Maybe that's why the strongest relationships aren't built by people who never get scared. They're built by two people who keep choosing each other, even while they're scared. And maybe the next time someone you love starts pulling away, instead of asking, "Why are you changing?" ask, "What happened that made you feel like you had to protect your heart?" Sometimes that question changes everything. Next chapter. What if the words, "I'm fine," are actually the biggest lie people tell in relationships? Let's talk about it. I'm fine. 4 letters, 2 words, and somehow they can start an entire argument. You've probably heard it. She says, "I'm fine." You ask, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, nothing's wrong." And then silence. And you're sitting there thinking, "Okay, so we're good?" Meanwhile, she's thinking, "You seriously don't notice anything?" And this is where things get complicated, because sometimes "I'm fine" actually means I don't want to talk right now. Sometimes it means I'm hurt, but I don't know how to explain it. Sometimes I'm disappointed and I'm waiting to see if you care enough to notice. And sometimes it really does mean I'm fine. That's important, because we can't assume every "I'm fine" is secretly a cry for help. But let's imagine one situation. A girl has had a horrible day. Her boss criticized her, her friend canceled plans, her family has been stressing her out, and by the end of the day, she's exhausted. She doesn't necessarily need a huge conversation, she just wants someone safe. So she talks to the person she loves, and he notices something is different. He asks, "What's wrong?" She says, "Nothing, I'm fine." He says, "Okay," and goes back to his phone. Now, technically, he did nothing wrong. She said she was fine. He believed her. But emotionally, something might still feel unfinished. Why? Because sometimes what we say and what we hope someone understands aren't exactly the same thing. But here's where we need to be fair. If you want someone to understand you, you also have to give them a chance to understand you. A partner isn't a mind reader, and relationships shouldn't become emotional exams where one person secretly tests, "Let's see if they notice." That's exhausting for both people. If you're hurt, eventually you have to find the courage to say, "That actually bothered me." Not, "You should already know." Because love isn't supposed to be a guessing game. And this is something girls can learn, and guys can learn too, because men say "I'm fine" as well. A guy can have the worst day imaginable. Someone asks, "Everything okay?" And he'll say, "Yeah, I'm good." Then he'll put his headphones on, go for a drive, play a game, go to the gym, or simply sit there quietly. Same emotion, different expression. Maybe that's why, instead of focusing on the exact words, we should sometimes pay attention to the person behind them, their energy, their tone, their silence, the little changes. Not to analyze every breath they take, but because when you know someone deeply, you start noticing when something feels different. And sometimes the most powerful response isn't, "What's wrong with you?" It's, "You seem a little off today. You don't have to talk about it right now, but I'm here if you want to." That's it. No pressure, no interrogation, no lecture, just presence. And maybe that's what people actually mean when they say they want someone who understands them. They don't expect you to know every thought in their head. They just want to feel that if something is wrong, they won't have to face it completely alone. Because sometimes, love isn't knowing exactly what to say. Sometimes, love is simply noticing and staying. You don't have to explain everything right now. I'm still here. Think about how powerful those words can be when they come from the right person. And there's one more thing we haven't talked about yet. What happens when someone finally tells you what's wrong, and instead of listening, you immediately start defending yourself? But I didn't mean it like that. You're taking it the wrong way. You're overreacting. Maybe you didn't mean to hurt them, but can you still understand that they were hurt? Because intent and impact aren't always the same thing. And understanding that difference might be one of the biggest secrets to making love last. So in the next chapter, we're going to talk about the sentence that can either save an argument or completely destroy it. You're overreacting. What happens when the person you love feels like their emotions are being dismissed? That's where things get really deep. There's one sentence that can turn a tiny disagreement into a full-blown emotional war. You're overreacting. Maybe you've said it, maybe you've heard it, maybe you've both said it to each other. And honestly, sometimes the person really is overreacting. People are human. We get tired, we get stressed, we misunderstand things, we react emotionally. But here's the problem. When someone is already hurt, telling them they're overreacting usually doesn't make the emotion disappear. It makes them feel unheard. Imagine a girl comes home after a horrible day. She tells her boyfriend, "You know what happened today? My manager embarrassed me in front of everyone." And he responds, "Forget about it. You're thinking too much." Maybe he means, don't let one bad moment ruin your day. He's trying to help, but what she hears is, your feelings aren't important enough for me to care about. That's the difference. Sometimes people don't need you to fix their emotions. They need you to acknowledge them. That sounds awful. I can understand why that upset you. Do you want to talk about it? That's not agreeing with everything they say. It's simply saying, I can see why you feel this way. And there's a huge difference between those two things. You can understand someone's feelings without agreeing with their conclusion. Think about it. Someone can say, I feel like you don't care about me anymore. You don't have to respond, yes, you're right, I don't care. Obviously not. You can say, I understand why you feel that way, but that's not how I feel about you. Now, you're not surrendering, you're connecting. And this is where many couples get stuck. One person wants to be understood, the other person wants to prove they're innocent. So the conversation becomes, I didn't do that. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. You always do this. You always exaggerate. Fine, fine. And now, nobody even remembers what the original problem was. The argument has become a competition. Who is right? Who is wrong? Who gets the last word? And somewhere in the middle, the actual relationship gets forgotten. But imagine, instead of defending yourself immediately, you pause. You look at the person you love and say, okay, tell me why that hurt you. Not, why are you being dramatic? Not, you're crazy. Not, here we go again. Just tell me. That tiny change can completely change the direction of a conversation because now you're not fighting against them. You're sitting beside them, trying to understand the problem together. And girls, if you're listening to this, there's something important for you too. Being emotionally hurt doesn't automatically mean your interpretation is correct. Your feelings are real, but sometimes the story your mind creates around those feelings can be wrong. You might think, he didn't text me because he doesn't care, when the reality is he was exhausted or working or dealing with something you knew nothing about. So feel the emotion. But before turning that emotion into an accusation, ask, hey, is everything okay between us? That question can save you from hours of unnecessary pain because there's something beautiful about emotional maturity. You don't have to stop feeling deeply. You just learn not to let every feeling become a fact. And for the guy, the lesson is just as important. Don't use logic to erase someone's emotions. If she says, that hurt me, your first response doesn't have to be, but I didn't mean it. Try, I didn't mean to hurt you, but I'm sorry that I did. That's powerful because you're not admitting to something you didn't intend. You're acknowledging that someone you love is hurting. And sometimes that's all they wanted. Maybe that's what love really asks from us. Not perfection, not mind reading, not winning every argument, just enough humility to stop for a second and say, help me understand you. Because the person standing in front of you isn't your enemy. They're the person you once looked at and thought, I want this person in my life. Don't let one argument make you forget that. And here's the strange part. Sometimes, the reason a girl gets so emotional with you isn't because she thinks you're the worst person in the world. It's because your opinion matters to her. Your attention matters. Your affection matters. And when those things suddenly feel distant, it can hit harder than you realize. Because you can't deeply hurt someone who feels nothing for you. But that doesn't mean every angry reaction is secretly love. Remember that. Sometimes anger is simply anger. Sometimes it's poor communication. Sometimes it's stress. Sometimes it's a relationship problem that actually needs to be addressed. The point isn't to romanticize every argument. The point is to understand what is happening underneath it. And that brings us to something even more interesting. What if sometimes she isn't actually angry at you? What if you're simply the person who happens to be standing closest when everything she's been holding inside finally spills over? And that's where we go next. Here's something that can completely change the way you look at someone's bad mood. Sometimes you're not the reason she's upset. You're simply the person she feels safe enough to be upset around. Think about this. Imagine a girl has spent the entire day being strong. She wakes up early, she's already tired. She has work, messages she doesn't want to answer, responsibilities, family expectations. Maybe she's worried about money. Maybe she's stressed about school. Maybe her best friend said something that hurt her. Maybe she doesn't even know what's wrong. But everywhere she goes, she's fine. Someone asks, "How are you?" She smiles. "I'm good." Her coworker makes a joke. She laughs. Someone needs help. She helps them. Someone complains. She listens. And then she finally gets home. She sees the one person she doesn't have to pretend around. And suddenly, she's quiet, irritated, sensitive. Maybe she snaps over something tiny. And that person thinks, why are you being like this with me? And honestly, that question can hurt. Because from her perspective, she might be thinking, because you're the one person I don't have to be okay around. Think about that. Sometimes people don't bring their polished version to the people they love. They bring the exhausted version, the messy version, the emotional version, the version that says, I don't know what's wrong with me today. And that can be a sign of trust. But there's an important line here. Feeling safe with someone doesn't give you permission to hurt them. You can be emotional. You can have a bad day. You can need space. But you still have to respect the person standing beside you. That's where emotional maturity comes in. Because there's a difference between saying, I'm overwhelmed, I need some time, and saying, get away from me, you're so annoying. One communicates a feeling. The other can create a wound. And this is where relationships get complicated. Sometimes, the person who feels safest ends up receiving the worst version of your emotions. Not because you don't love them, but because you trust they'll stay. And that's beautiful until it becomes unfair. Because the person who loves you isn't supposed to become your emotional punching bag. So if you're a girl listening right now and you've ever thought, why do I become so emotional around him? Maybe part of the answer is you finally stopped performing. You don't have to look perfect. You don't have to smile every second. You don't have to pretend you're okay. You can say, I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what's wrong. Can you just hold me for a minute? And there is nothing weak about that. Actually, being able to tell someone, I need you right now, can require more courage than pretending you don't need anybody. But guys, there's something here for you too. If the girl you love suddenly becomes quiet, don't immediately assume she's angry at me. Sometimes she might just be exhausted. Sometimes she might have spent the entire day taking care of everyone else. And finally, she has no energy left to take care of herself. So instead of, what's your problem? Try, rough day? And if she says, yeah, maybe you don't need a 10-minute speech. Maybe just say, come here. Sometimes that's enough. Because love isn't always about finding the perfect words. Sometimes it's about making someone's nervous system feel you're safe here. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to be cheerful. You don't have to pretend. You can just exist. And maybe that's why the people we love sometimes see the parts of us nobody else gets to see. The tears, the frustration, the silence, the weird moods, the insecurity, the fear, the childish side, the vulnerable side, all of it, because they got close enough to see behind the mask. But there's another side to this. Sometimes a person can become so comfortable that they stop trying, they stop communicating, they stop saying sorry, they start thinking they'll understand, they love me anyway, and slowly comfort becomes carelessness. That's dangerous because being someone's safe place should never mean you stop being considerate of them. The person who loves you most still deserves your gentleness. So if she has a bad day, give her space if she needs it. Give her affection if she wants it. Ask what she needs. And if she's genuinely treating you badly, set a boundary. Love isn't, I tolerate everything because I love you. Love is, I understand you, but I also respect myself. That's healthy love. Two people who can be vulnerable without becoming cruel. Two people who can say, I'm having a bad day, without making the other person feel responsible for fixing everything. And two people who can eventually look at each other and say, I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that. Maybe that's the real goal. Not to find someone who never gets angry. Not to find someone who never has mood swings. Not to find someone who is happy every single day. Find someone who can come back after the storm and talk to you honestly. Because everyone has bad days. Everyone gets overwhelmed. Everyone gets sensitive sometimes. Everyone needs reassurance. But the healthiest relationships are the ones where both people eventually learn how to turn I'm upset into let me tell you why, and you're annoying me into I'm overwhelmed right now. Can we talk later? And leave me alone into I need some space, but please don't think I don't love you. That's emotional growth. Not becoming emotionless. Learning how to express emotion without destroying connection. And in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that almost every relationship eventually faces. Why does she sometimes compare you to another guy? Why does she say, he would have noticed? He would have done this. Why can't you be more like him? Is she actually interested in someone else? Or is she desperately trying to tell you what she needs from you? The answer isn't always what you think. There's a sentence that can instantly change the mood of a relationship. You know what? He would have understood. Or, why can't you be more like him? And if you've ever heard that from your girlfriend, you probably felt something immediately. Seriously? You're comparing me to another guy now? And honestly, that can hurt. A lot. But let's slow down for a second, because sometimes the sentence you're hearing isn't actually the message she's trying to communicate. Sometimes she's not saying, I want him. She's saying, I wish you did this. There's a difference. Imagine a girl telling her boyfriend, my friend called me after my exam because she knew I was stressed, and he says, okay, good for you. She gets irritated. See, that's the problem with you. You never notice things like that. He immediately gets defensive. So now I'm supposed to be like your friend? And suddenly, the conversation explodes. But underneath all that anger, there might be a much simpler sentence. I wanted you to notice me too. That's the sentence she might not know how to say. Because sometimes people don't know how to ask directly for affection, so they point at an example. Look what he did. Look how he remembered. Look how he checked on me. But what they're really trying to communicate is, I want to feel cared for like that. Now, let's be clear. Comparing your partner to another person isn't healthy communication. If you constantly tell someone, he's better than you, she's better than you, why can't you be like them? That can slowly destroy confidence and create resentment. So no, you don't have to accept disrespect just because there's an emotion underneath it. But you can still ask, what are you actually asking me for? That question changes everything. Because maybe she doesn't want another man. Maybe she wants more attention, more affection, more effort, more reassurance, more little surprises, more curiosity about her life. Maybe she wants you to remember the things she tells you instead of making her repeat them. And here's something many people underestimate. When you're in a relationship, tiny details become huge. Her favorite snack, the song she always skips, the coffee she orders, the thing that makes her nervous, the date of her important presentation, the story she told you 3 months ago that you barely remember, but she remembers that you were supposed to remember. Because attention says, I listen when you talk, and listening says, your world matters to me. That's why sometimes a girl isn't asking for something expensive. She's asking, did you remember? And when you remember, you might not realize how big that feels. Because for her, it can mean, he actually listens to me. But now, let's flip the situation. Imagine a guy's girlfriend constantly says, my friend's boyfriend does this. My friend's boyfriend bought her that. Why don't you make more money? Why aren't you as romantic as him? Eventually, even the most confident person starts feeling, maybe I'm not enough. And that's exactly why comparison can be dangerous. It doesn't inspire love. It often creates insecurity. So if you're a girl listening, here's something worth remembering. If you want your boyfriend to do something differently, tell him what you need. Don't make him compete with a stranger. Say, I really love it when you check on me during stressful days. It makes me feel cared for. That's much more powerful than, my friend's boyfriend does it. And guys, the same applies to you. If you want more affection, don't say, other girls don't act like this. Tell her, I really love when you initiate affection. It makes me feel wanted. That's communication. That's intimacy. That's actually giving someone a chance to love you better. Because here's the beautiful part. People aren't born knowing exactly how to love each other. You learn, you observe, you communicate, you make mistakes, you apologize, you try again. And slowly, you become fluent in each other's emotional language. Maybe she learns that when you're quiet, you don't necessarily want space. Maybe you just need a hug. Maybe you learn that when she says, I'm okay, in that particular tone, she might need a little extra reassurance. Not every time, not automatically, but because you've paid attention. That's what intimacy really is, not knowing everything, knowing what matters. And maybe that's why the person you love can get angry over something tiny, because the tiny thing is sometimes pointing towards something much bigger. You forgot to call may actually mean, I missed feeling close to you. You didn't notice my new haircut may actually mean, I wanted you to notice me. You didn't ask how my day went may actually mean, I wanted to feel important to you. And sometimes, the best response isn't, why are you making such a big deal about this? It's, wait, is there something bigger bothering you? That question can open a door. Because beneath anger, there can be a request. Beneath criticism, there can be insecurity. Beneath comparison, there can be an unmet need. And beneath, you don't care, there can sometimes be, please show me that you do. But here's where our story gets even more complicated. What happens when you actually give someone everything they say they want, and they still feel unhappy? What if the problem isn't the relationship anymore? What if it's something happening inside them? In the next chapter, we're going to talk about insecurity. Why can someone be deeply loved and still wonder, am I enough? And that question can change the way a person behaves in ways even they don't understand. Before we end this podcast, I want to ask you one final question. Have you ever looked back at an old argument and realized it was never really about the argument? Maybe it was about wanting to feel important, wanting to feel chosen, wanting to feel understood. Sometimes, when a girl gets upset over something that looks small, it isn't because the moment is small. It's because the feeling underneath it isn't. And sometimes, she isn't asking for expensive gifts, or perfect words, or a perfect boyfriend. She's simply hoping the person she loves will notice when her smile isn't real. But here's something equally important. Love doesn't mean accepting every argument. Love doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. And love definitely doesn't mean trying to read someone's mind every single day. Healthy relationships need something much simpler. Honest conversations, kindness, patience, and the courage to say, I don't fully understand how you feel, but I want to. Maybe that's what real love looks like. Not two perfect people, but two imperfect people choosing to understand each other again and again and again. So, the next time someone you love seems angry, don't only ask, what did they say? Ask yourself, what might they be feeling? Because sometimes, behind anger, there's disappointment. Behind silence, there's fear. Behind tears, there's love. And behind, I'm fine, there might simply be someone who doesn't want to lose the person they care about. If this podcast helped you understand someone, even a little, then maybe the next conversation you have won't turn into another argument. Maybe it'll become the conversation that saves your relationship. Take care of the people who make your heart feel like home. And if you're lucky enough to find someone who chooses you every single day, don't stop choosing them back. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next story.